Hi guys, so today I'm going to be doing another versus video. The first one I did was Name of the Wind versus Way of Kings, and today instead of taking two popular fantasy books, I thought it'd be kind of fun to compare two very big name publishers for the science fiction fantasy genre, and that would be Tor and Orbit. Just a heads up, this is not me trying to convince anybody that one of these publishers is better than the other. I wanted to take some statistics based off of the books that I have chosen. I've chosen 5 books for each of these publishers that I feel are very popular, very big names for these publishing companies, and I wanted to kind of compare the average ratings for the books, the amount of ratings for the books, those kinds of things, just to see, because I think it's kind of fascinating. Because the fantasy genre is filled with series, with the books that I have chosen, all the stats are based off of the first books in those series. And also, I would actually clarify and say I chose 4 really big names for each of these groups, but then one kind of booktube darling type of a popular book, something that maybe isn't going to make best of fantasy lists, but is something that a lot of people on booktube liked. I did that for each of them, and the books that I did for Tor are as follows. Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, The Shades of Magic by V.E. Schwab, Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson, and Every Heart a Doorway by Shannon McGuire. The books that I have chosen for Orbit are as follows. Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski, Black Prism by Brent Weeks, Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames, Powder Mage by Brian McClellan, and The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to make this slightly interactive, and just based off of the books that I have chosen, I would be very curious to know which of these two publishing houses do you find has the books that you gravitate toward? Which of these has books that you tend to like more? Would that be Tor or Orbit? You can go ahead and leave your vote in this poll that I'm going to put up here, and in a week's time I'll go ahead and put all of the poll results both on my Instagram and on my Twitter. So before actually putting these two publishing houses against one another with these selected books, I thought it'd be good to look at how these books fit within their respective publishing houses. So I'm actually going to start with Orbit and take a look at this visual so that we can see a better idea of how well each of these books does for their publishing houses. We can see that I did round up for the percentages, but Witcher, Black Prism, and The Fifth Season all come in very highly, whereas Powder Mage, it's a series that I think a lot of people really enjoy but maybe isn't as popular, or it's newer. That's one that brings in a little bit less, and then the booktube darling that I picked for Orbit would be Kings of the Wyld. That is why it is the smallest sliver here. Now to compare how the books that I selected for Tor have done in their publishing house. So we can see that Mistborn and Wheel of Time are dominating. The ones in Orbit, we had 3 of them that were all in the high 20s, but here we have 2 that take over 35 or over. And then Shades of Magic, which I think is extremely popular here on BookTube, for Tor in comparison to Mistborn, and in comparison to Wheel of Time, it's not nearly as much. It as 16%, then Malazan is at 9, and then Every Heart a Doorway, I think I did pretty well because it also took 5% of the total amount of ratings for these 5 books. Now looking at how these compare to one another. So within their own respective publishing houses, some of these looked like they did better than some of the ones that had a lower percentage in the other publishing house, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they had less ratings or that their ratings weren't as good. It just means in comparison to other books within their own publishing company, they might have done a little bit better. So when it comes to popularity, which I base this off of how many ratings there were for each of the books that I selected, Tor kind of destroyed Orbit. We have a total of 912,678 ratings for the 5 books selected, whereas for Orbit we have 306,966. Now I do want to kind of take a second to reflect as to why that might be the case. I personally think the books that I selected from Tor, a lot of them are older. Wheel of Time is kind of one of the oldest ones on this list, and Malazan's a little bit older, where you have Kings of the Wyld. That one has been out for a little while, but it's newer. Black Prism and the Lightbringer books, those are newer. So I'd say that Tor kind of has the advantage here. It not only has some powerhouses, but it's got some powerhouses that are older, and so of course they've had more time to accumulate more ratings. As far as the average ratings for these 5 books combined versus the average rating for the other 5 books, Orbit wins. Orbit has the average rating of 4.25 for these 5 books, whereas Tor has the average rating of 4.1. Again, I did round up for these averages in case you ever wanted to do these stats yourself, but I definitely would say that because there are so many, there's basically 3 times as many ratings for the Tor books as there are for the Orbit books. That definitely makes a difference. It's not always true, but often the more ratings you have, the more people that are just going to feel either lukewarm or not so great about a book, and that's going to drop the rating. So I would say that's probably a heavy contributor to why Orbit wins. Maybe some people just feel, maybe you just feel that Orbit has the better books, but I think when you actually see the amount of ratings, it probably plays a role. To basically completely contradict that theory though, when we look at the book out of all of these 10 that has the highest average rating, that one comes from Tor, and it also happens to be one of the books with the highest amount of ratings, and that would be Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson with 4.45 as the average rating. Despite Tor having the winner for the average highest rating, it also happens to be the winner for the average lowest rating, and that would be for Every Heart a Doorway at 3.85. Just to compare, the lowest rating for the Orbit books was 4.16. To recap all of these different categories then, with Tor versus Orbit, we have the average rating going to Orbit at 4.25 versus the average rating for Tor being at 4.1. The highest average rating for Tor was 4.45 with Mistborn. The lowest average rating also went to Tor at 3.85 versus the lowest was 4.16 for Orbit. And then as far as popularity, you can see Tor dominates. Again, I'm sure that a lot of you have your own theories as to why that is the case, but it's sitting at almost 3 times as many ratings for their 5 books that I chose versus the 5 books that I chose for Orbit. Stats aside, what are some subjective reasons why you might personally like one of these publishing houses over the other? I find that I tend to trust Tor more to appeal to my personal tastes, although there are exceptions, of course, because with Tor, I love Mistborn. It is my favorite trilogy of all time, but then Every Heart a Doorway just really wasn't for me. It definitely doesn't feel like it has the same tone when you compare it to Mistborn at all. And then on the flip side, looking at Orbit, I love Witcher. Granted, it is a translation, so that's a little different. Doesn't exactly fit in with the others the same way, but still, I love Witcher. And then while I respect the 5th season for what it does and for the fact that it appeals to so many people and it's so well loved, it just was not for me at all. And it was, I think, because of the use of the second person writing style. So those two are very different from one another. And then Every Heart a Doorway and Mistborn are very different from one another, but still I find myself gravitating toward Tor. Anyway, because the statistics themselves were so balanced between these two, I'm not personally going to declare a winner. I'm gonna let you guys declare the winner based off the stats. I'll go ahead and put one more poll up here. It's gonna have the same options of Tor versus Orbit, but this time instead of you deciding which one you like more based off of the actual books, you're letting me know based off the statistics which one would you declare the winner. Hopefully you found some of these numbers as interesting as I did, but anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your day and I'll see you all later. Bye.